the mayor of Moscow, Idaho, Art Bedke. Mayor, thank you very much for being here. Good to have you with us. I know it's been a tough week. How do you know this was an isolated incident and that it was a one-off?
The police have been doing their work and looking over the crime scene. They haven't been sharing a lot of information about that, but they have stated unequivocally that there is no danger to the broader public out of this one, and that they believe this was a singular targeted incident and no one else is in any jeopardy.
How do they know that? Because there's a killer of these 4 individuals who is out there somewhere, correct?
Yeah, exactly. They know something from the crime scene and the nature of the crime that they've not shared with the rest of us. And that is because they're wishing to protect the integrity of the investigation, eventual prosecution, and also to prevent the perpetrator from understanding the direction and progress in the investigation as well. So they've not been...
Based on what the mayor said, it sounds like the residence was the target, and not the victims inside. I believe this because he made multiple statements saying that this was a targeted, one-off crime, and that LE came to that conclusion based on evidence at the scene. Not once did he ever mention the victims. In my opinion, the police seemed to understand the intent of the attack on day 1, and the intent was focused on the location, not the students inside.
Well, so they've not been sharing a lot, but I do believe our police department when they state that there is no danger to the broader public.
Well, you can understand why people would want their kids to come home when there's a killer of college students who is on the loose, clearly, and the police have not said anything to the public. They haven't given a press conference in 48 hours, and it's been called a crime of passion. If that's the case, how do we know that other students are not also on this person's list?
I'm working on the assumption that police know what they're talking about. I've been pushing strongly for them to stage a press conference. The sooner, the better. And we can get their take on why they believe this. And I'm pushing to have this done sooner than later, like even today, if I can get it done. So we're waiting to hear without jeopardizing the investigation of what the police believe has gone on.
So you said that it happened between 3 and 4 in the morning. Can you walk us through the timeline?
Yeah, the forensics indicate that the crime occurred at 3 or 4 in the morning. The crime was not reported until just about noon the next day, or noon the same day. And someone called in having observed an unconscious person, they assumed unconscious person, and called the police. The police showed up and arrived at a crime scene where there were 4 deceased individuals. No one unconscious. The unconscious individual was actually one of the victims. So the police entered, saw that there were no survivors, exited the dwelling.
It was immediately obvious that no one survived the attack, yet 911 was not called first. Yeah, nothing suspicious about that.
Waited for a search warrant before going back in to begin processing the scene. So they had to wait for the search warrant to arrive in order to provide adequate Fourth Amendment protection.
I have to let you go, but is that 3 o'clock?
Damn, why did she have to cut him off like that? I wanted him to keep talking. Anyway, I could be wrong, but I did not think a search warrant was necessary in this situation. And if this is true, where is that search warrant? Because I have not seen it.
But is that 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock time frame because someone was posting on social media right up until about that point?
I haven't heard that.
Well, how did you arrive at 3 or 4 in the morning when no one was found until noon?
That was due to forensic.
Okay. Art Bedke, it's a horrific tragedy for your town. I know you've been there for 33 years.
An official release from the U of I president's office asked that employees be flexible and work with students that want to return home to be with family. The mayor of Moscow says the situation right now is complicated. He says they're waiting for confirmation from the coroner's office on the cause of death and that there's no ongoing threat to the community.
Around looking at the timeline when things happened, it turns out that this is a one-time event at one particular location. This does not carry on to the larger community.
Again, there's no suspect in custody at this moment.
So what we're going to do is we have a list of the theories that have been spreading around social media, and I'm going to read them to you, and you just tell me yes or no. We're going to debunk them right now, okay? Was there any notes written on a wall?
I think you're going to be asking about stuff that's involved in the case that I don't have knowledge of. So,
No?
I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know if notes were written on the wall.
Kids were bound and gagged.
That is incorrect.
Roommates saw someone with a mask.
I don't have that knowledge.
This was 2 weeks after the crime, and he didn't know? So when did they speak to Dylan?
This was somehow drug-related.
I don't have that knowledge.
Ex-boyfriends or suspects?
I don't have that knowledge.
Kaylee and Madison called the boyfriend about 10 times before.
There were numerous calls that were made to a male.
His reaction when he was asked about notes on the wall was kind of odd, in my opinion. And I noticed he only debunked the rumor about the victims being bound and gagged. Everything else he claimed to have no knowledge of. He denied knowing about any unharmed roommates seeing someone in a mask, which is obviously an issue since the PCA says the opposite. This is why I believe that MPD fabricated details of this crime and built a narrative to fit the accused perpetrator, rather than let the evidence take them to the truth. Otherwise, they would have immediately put out a bolo for someone matching Dylan's description. They were purposely vague and contradictory, so they would have wiggle room in their story.
More details to be released. You have the first homicides in this city in 8 years. And do you think police have no leads at this point?
Well, I don't know if they have leads per se or any individuals of interest, but I think there's probably some arrows pointing them in certain directions.
So then how can they tell the community that it's safe?
I think from the evidence that exists on site, the conclusion was fairly straightforward that this was targeted, isolated, doesn't pertain to any other location or any other individuals in the city.
If Brian was the crazed maniac that the prosecution would like the public to believe, then this statement made by the mayor couldn't be true. I know this has been walked back by MPD, but in my opinion, this statement is too specific to be untrue.
For everybody.
Police are calling it a homicide. Authorities say the initial call for an unconscious person came in just before noon Sunday. But Mayor Art Betke telling ABC News the crime happened hours before.
Given what the nature of the scene was, they've indicated that it was 3 or 4 in the morning when things happened.
3 or 4 a.m. was the original timeline. It sounds like they determined this timeline not from cell phone records or other evidence, but based off something at the scene. I wonder what it was. I believe there was something specific and unique at the crime scene, and that's what gave Ellie the confidence to tell UI that it was safe to lift the shelter in place. There had to be something that gave law enforcement the confidence to reassure University of Idaho that it was safe to lift the vandal alert. They could only know this if they immediately knew who committed the crime, or at the very least, the motive and intent behind the attack.
There's been no named suspect, but as this investigation continues, you believe that the students and residents of the city are safe right now.
Right. Especially because given the very focused nature of what went on there, no other apartments nearby were involved. And in the ensuing 8 or 9 hours between the actuality of the crime and the call into the police, nothing happened. I think the eventual conclusion is going to bear out the fact that this was a one-off crime that was committed.
Is it me, or did he make a weird face when he said that? Let's watch again.
Conclusion is going to bear out the fact that this was a one-off crime that was committed and was very focused and doesn't involve other students or the public in general at all.
Like I said, if Brian committed the crime according to the current narrative, what would make him so focused on this location and these victims? They want us to believe he's a crazed incel stalker. But if that's true, then why wouldn't anyone else be a potential target?
At all.
Now, the mayor went on to say that he thinks a suspect could be named in the coming days. He also said there in Moscow, the city and the university are incredibly intertwined. And you guys, he described this crime as horrific, rare, and isolated.
Rare is that the mayor was the only one telling the truth in the very beginning, if you ask me. He said the same thing in multiple interviews, consistently. Also, the fact that Ellie guarded the house even after the crime scene was released tells me that there was something at the location that could not be moved. Therefore, it had to be under security's watchful eye. How could a house have so many secrets? Maybe that's why there was such a rush to destroy it. What do you guys think? Anyway, that's all for now.